Hello. So this is just more of a video that's talking more about just enjoyment of everyday life, happiness, and everything that's surrounding that, which is quite the mouthful, honestly, but I think the important note to start with is that with happiness, it ebbs and flows. Like, it comes in like waves of like, have like highs and then the lows, and like it dips as it does, like goes up and down otherwise. But I think for that, the important note is that what I will be talking about is what I've done in the past, just like what worked, what didn't work, and what I'm doing now, and like what's working and what's not working. So I think for me, a lot of past has been, or I guess just like the college type thing was more just like solitude side of things. And I think there is a distinction to be made between just like solitude and loneliness aspect of things, because some people are able to thrive or work really well when they're doing things alone, whether it's say like doing more like mundane tasks to just say you want to check out a farmer's market, check out a bookstore, check out these different like activities that you want to do with friends, say like try a new restaurant, or you know, like the list goes on in terms of like fun things to try out with like groups of friends or different people at end of day. Now, having said that, it's like there's nothing wrong with doing all those things that I said, but just with the comfort of yourself. There's nothing wrong with that, because I think in the past I would do that, and then I just put music on in the background, or just have, say, my phone just playing like audiobook or a different thing altogether. And I think it's like it's worked to a certain extent, but I really needed the human connection part of things. I think a lot of people do overall, but I think that's a separate can of worms altogether. If you look at the bigger picture of like the pandemic and just like everybody's just like being housed alone in their comfort of their homes, whether it's with their parents, with their like SOs, or just alone if they're just living in their, say, studio, or like otherwise in terms of things. That's important to keep into consideration in like the grand scheme of things. But I think it's important to note that a lot of life is spent alone, and being comfortable with the more alone aspect of things. I think for me, I did not really feel comfortable in that note, and more associated more the solitude aspect of things with more like the loneliness aspect of things, which I think at times they intertwine, but for some people they're able to work well with that and be able to function well in terms of things. Because I think end of day humans are social creatures. End of the day, we enjoy, well, I speak for myself, I enjoy having these conversations and having time like with others in terms of just, I guess just like I like hanging out with friends. I like making new friends and being able to talk the talk, and in turn, not talk the talk that I misspoke there, like getting to know people in a more genuine, authentic way. And that's not easily replicated in front of, say, like screens or just like social media altogether. It's a lot different behind the screen in terms of these online friends that you have versus more ones in person. Okay, so I think too long didn't read for the past of what didn't work or did work to a certain extent is that you have to be comfortable with the more solitude side of things in terms of life altogether. And in doing so, just being able to acknowledge that at times for these different activities is that you'll be alone for some of them, you'll be with people for other times, and being comfortable with that as a notion overall. Is I know this doesn't cover a big picture of like, there's like loneliness if you're in a group of people, if say like you don't relate to people, or there's not that like energy or a spark perhaps in terms of connecting with others. Now moving on to today, so more to the more positive, happy vibes of things would be, I think for me now, it's that I applied what I learned from before, or just like do things alone and those aspects of things. And I just tried it in a new setting in terms of pretty much I started from complete scratch, just made a meetup for an interest, which I think that is really easier said than done, but I think a similar avenue you could do is you just join an interest group for, say, a hobby you enjoy or recreational activity, whether it's just like sports or a different type thing, and just show up in those environments because you're more likely to meet like-minded individuals and be able to have like conversations with them, and if things go well, you just exchange contact or see what works or what people are comfortable with. I think that's a really oversimplified version of things, because for that to go from stranger to acquaintance to friend to close friend is not just like, if I could snap, I would snap. Not like an overnight sort of thing, because if you look at just like growing up, it's more like in your formative years in terms of like, say, like a K-12 environment, you have the same cohort of different people that you might have taken classes with, in addition to the grades lower than you, grades higher than you, in terms of taking those in consideration. Now, once you're thrown out into the real world as like an adult, all that's sort of thrown out the window, because you can really make friends with anyone at the end of the day through just, I guess, just like being friendly in terms of things, and also just like speaking about your interests, your hobbies, what you enjoy doing, and just different things at the end of the day. Which I think saying all this is very oversimplified aspect of things, but I think for me in the past, I think I felt very, I'm trying to think the best way to describe it. I think I felt very isolated and very like left out at times, because I felt like in a city of millions of people, if you aren't able to like connect with like, say, like one person, then I must be a problem of like doing something wrong, of not doing things correctly one way or another. Which I think at times it's like true to a certain extent, but also I don't think it's fair to like blame everything on you in terms of things, as everyone is learning and growing day by day, and who someone is in the past is not who they representative of who they are right now. I think things that have been working for me right now beyond that is making an active effort to actually reach out and schedule things with people and be real. As much as I hate saying this, I'd say just like be anal to certain extents, like not like overly like, oh, we need to do this at this precise time, at this precise location, at this precise thing. Like that's what I do, aside from things in terms of as a meetup organizer, in terms of organizing and creating different events. But if it's just like with friends and more like an offline thing, then it's just like, oh, do you want to do like this restaurant at this time? And then you just shoot it off in like a group chat, or just like ask a friend or ask a few friends, and just go on your way in doing that. Just, I think some like more on the go in terms of things, versus more just like, I think with the being anal about things, I think it's more not like be like big about things. I'd say it's more just like be on time and prompt in terms of how you show up as a person, but also just try to just navigate things as they are, in terms of whether it's more like informal thing, or just like if it needs to be scheduled way out in advance, or different things, or your mileage may vary for a lot of these, because differ situation. I'm trying to think what else has worked for me in terms of things, because I'm oversimplifying a lot of like, oh, you just make a friend and they transition from complete stranger to acquaintance to friend to best friend, as I just like described. But it's really not overnight like that, because I think it's really the repeated exposure of things and continuing to actually put yourself out there and continuing to try these different things, and not being afraid to look embarrassed or cringe or all these different other things. I can say that I'm like an organizer of a local anime group, which in theory it sounds really cringe in terms of things, even though it's more accepted like as a hobby nowadays. But I think it's just like showing up as yourself and being the most authentic version of yourself. And if people like that, that's great. If they don't, then just find like other people in terms of things. Like, don't change who you are as a person just to fit in, and just like, and like just to fit in and just enjoy the presence of others in terms of things. Trying to think how that relates in terms of like present and past. Is I think in the past I was very more, I think I was very in the space of like this corporate jargon and like this corporate mind that has seeped through like past the 9 to 5, and just like having that like an unhealthy amount of that in terms of my identity as a whole. And now I can say that although I speak, I think I just in general just sound more sophisticated, and I just need to like chillax sometimes. But I think for that, I felt like I had to overly just like, no, I just had to overly have to just like be my corporate self at the corporate environment. And sometimes I would just like leak over because you talked about like work or like other stuff that I'm not as interested in post-work hours, and it would be a turn off to me in terms of if people did that in terms of things. So that's sort of goes into why I strictly do not talk about like anything like career or like other stuff unless prompted otherwise, because people are really interested in talking about themselves at length. Hence why it's easy to just talk about, say, like hobbies, interests, and different things, and just see how to navigate conversations if they're overtly like career focused or like centered around that in terms of things. I say it's a turn off for me in terms of things, but you just have to sort of navigate that, because it sort of is what you do for the rest of your like waking life. So it makes sense for people to overly like identify with that. I think this video is getting a bit more longer side of things, but I think too long to read of the was, worked, and present time of things would be really precise and more like anal in terms of how you schedule things with people, and doing your best to show up as your most authentic self, and just find community through just, I think, just like more organic ways in terms of just whether it is joining these different classes that you find like out and about in a setting, whether it's say like you take, I don't know, just like brainstorm, like say you take like a comedy class that you're interested in, joining a cohort of different people at different stages of their comedy, whether it's like hobby, interest, or career, or just taking say like cooking or just like different recreational hobbies in terms of things offered by say local community, like, or I guess like local communities sometimes have it in terms of whether it's a nonprofit or whether it's partnered with the township or different things altogether. I'd say beyond that, the not as organic part would be utilizing social media where you search the keywords, say Chicago, like city Chicago, and then I want to do say skating. You just search up like these keywords on say these social media outlets or different things, and identifying different organizations you want to join or partake in, and actively make that effort in terms of showing up as who you are, and just I guess like socializing. I don't know what to tell you. I think beyond that would be, yeah, just take it day by day. It's a learning process, and what works for one person doesn't work for another. But I'm just happy to be at a point where I can say I'm not miserable and I actually enjoy the life that I'm living. And I can say that I help people make friends as, let me see how I can rephrase it. I made the space that I wanted when I moved to the city, because I was just wanting to create like a nerdy type group in the city of Chicago. And it's not that they didn't exist from before, but I think for me, it's very hard to navigate that in terms of what a nerd or a geek entails is very, very expansive in terms of things. And I just rolled with one in terms of like one I could more relate to, just like anime and more approachable side of things. As like I do have active hobbies outside of this, such as like more running side of things, cooking, comedy, and like just different other interests. Wow, it's wild. He's a multidisciplinary person that has actual interests and hobbies outside of one fixation. I think for that, it's just like just showing up as who you are, and being able to have created this community has been really great for me as a person. I'm glad that I was able to create this space for other people who have, say, moved to the city, they want to get to know people, and otherwise. I promise that these videos won't just be a plug for like the meetup or whatever, but just more takeaways in terms of what worked and what hasn't worked at end of the day. Because it's just a learning process for everyone as they navigate their lives, whether it's not even just like 20s part of things, just like different parts of their lives, because people are at different stages of their life in terms of not just say like the 20s, 30s aspect of things, but just where they are in terms of where they want to be, whether it's from the like social lens or career lens or just the different types of lenses people want to look at them. Okay, this has dragged on too long, but if you have listened to this up to this point, I really appreciate it. And as always, I will end it with "Don't Be Awesome" from Hank and John Green. Toodles.